Well, hello again, everybody. This is John Norris at Trading Perspectives. As always, we have our good friends Sam Clement and Courtney Trust. Y'all say hello.
How's it
Hey,
going?
John.
Hey, guys. You know something, guys? Over the last couple of weeks, you've probably seen it. I mean, if you haven't seen it, you've probably been out on a boat, maybe in the middle of the Pacific or Atlantic, perhaps in a cave, Courtney, with your bushel full of children. Maybe that's something that you've done this summer. But regardless, unless you have been on one of these types of exciting trips, you have probably read something about cryptocurrencies and their collapse. Sam, have you read anything about this?
Well, of course. I mean, it's kind of a, reminds me of the sell more umbrellas when it's raining. I mean, there's going to be lots of talk about it when things are hitting the fan and when things are doing great. And so we saw a lot of that when, Bitcoin and others went up to 60-something thousand, and you're sure as heck seeing it now when it's back under 20.
Yeah.
Is it surprising at all with the volatility in the market that, oh no, Bitcoin, it's not very stable, would fluctuate like crazy?
Well, the thing is, cryptocurrencies just in general, and people throw Bitcoin out there because it is the largest and most visible, arguably the most liquid, but we're finding out how illiquid it actually is recently. But we use Bitcoin as a proxy for the cryptocurrency market just in general. And, Courtney, kind of to your point, but maybe not completely, it wasn't that long ago. I mean, just within the last 12 months that Bitcoin got up to close to $68,000. However, it had flipped and flopped and whatnot over the last several years. There have been times we have wild fluctuations, wild swings. However, something seems a little bit different about this one because, Sam, if I'm not mistaken, going from where it was until the recent lows, which just this past weekend, we've seen Bitcoin fall close to 70 to 75% off its recent highs.
Yeah, I mean, it's been just a extreme version of what we've seen in the rest of markets. We've seen other markets start to tighten up, and with rates rising, and you're even seeing it happen within the companies that are involved in the crypto space, whether they're publicly traded or private companies that are having to do private credit facilities with other cryptocurrency companies. You're seeing a big contraction not only in the actual coins, but in the space as a whole.
If I'm not mistaken, some of these coins have just been completely wiped out.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I haven't checked my Shiba Inu coins recently, but I would imagine that $10 I spent to get some 300,000 of them not too long ago, I would imagine I probably have closer to cents on the dollar than my $10.
I would assume so. I'd probably just not look at that if I were you.
That's not terribly difficult for me. I haven't looked at my Coinbase account in quite some time, but got to tell you, Courtney, I mean, here I am, Gen X, kind of salt and pepper hair, I'd say, and
Maybe more salt.
boy, you're cute today. and so, I never really kind of understood what the appeal was to Bitcoin quite as much as maybe some other people. I don't know if that's a function of my generation, my age, or what have you. It wasn't the fact that I didn't think the technology was cool. It wasn't the fact that I didn't think blockchain technology was here to stay, that we're going to use it. It's going to change how we do a lot of IT, how we conduct business, maybe even live our lives. I just didn't quite understand the thought process behind something that I can't touch, I can't really see. It's hard for me to kind of think about what a Bitcoin is. You can explain it to me, but if I can't see it or even feel it or touch it, I'm confused by what it is. Now, granted, you can sit there and say about money in the money supply. Hell, you just Zelle it or Venmo it. No one actually ever sees it. However, if I want to get a dollar bill, I can get a dollar bill.
Right.
And I know what it looks like, and I know what the concept is behind it. But I had a difficult time with Bitcoin because I couldn't do those things, and people just said I was an old fart. Sam, your thoughts?
Well, the libertarian in me loves it, loves the idea of it. Decentralized currency. I mean, to anybody who calls himself a libertarian, the idea of that is fantastic. But the actuality of it is much different. We've joked about it, as long as the U.S. government only takes dollars for my tax payments, that's kind of it.
Yeah, as long as the U.S. government has guns and ways to kill me from outer space, or, many miles away, I'll take my dollars. I'm not going to use Bitcoin. And then the thing I couldn't understand, Courtney,
I'm not sure the relationship of that in Bitcoin.
The taxing authorities have a lot of weapons to do me in, and they want dollars. So I'll be happy to take my dollars. And the thing is, Courtney, explain to me this. Maybe you can explain it to me. Maybe you can't. I don't know.
Probably not.
If I've got let's say a Bitcoin, And I think it's a neat thing, and it's going to go up in price because that's why I buy it, right?
Right.
It's going to go up in price. That's what a lot of people are just betting on it, just going up and up and up forever. Why in the heck would I take that to the Chevron station and buy a 6-pack of beer with it?
Well, you wouldn't. And that's, I think there's a lot of cognitive dissonance going on. And,
I like it,
and
cognitive dissonance.
People want to say it's a store value and then go out and say, well, it's going to outperform the S&P 500. Well, the S&P 500 is not a store value. You don't want that to happen necessarily with a store value. So people don't, and then it goes back to what you're saying about, do you spend it? Well, if you think it's going to outperform something, why wouldn't you just not buy any stocks, buy that's going to go up more and sell the stocks that are going to underperform?
Well, you're right about that. If I think it's going to appreciate, why would I want to spend something that's going to appreciate in value on something that I'm going to consume in a very short period of time?
And that's why deflation, we've talked about, is a scarier problem really than inflation, when you're talking about something that's a currency, because demand will dry up completely if you are spending, if the vehicle to spend money is going up in value. Why would you would hold off as long as you ever could?
Well, doesn't that kind of change the mindset to your point, John? Like, is it really currency, or is it just another form of another, for lack of a better word,
investment?
Yes. Another investment. So really what you're doing is you're playing off of the, okay, well, it's not backed by anything, or maybe it is, but it's not backed by gold, like our traditional mindset. You can't go out and get $1. And I think for me, I've already said, I'm risk averse. I don't like volatile investments. But when they had the article that said, okay, some of these were going down, and they basically were locking any withdrawals down. You couldn't access it wasn't Bitcoin, but you couldn't access your virtual currency. To me, no thank you. Like, that makes me extremely uncomfortable. If it's my money, I should have access to it, even if it's at a drastically reduced price. If I want to be crazy and get all my money out, then I should be able to do that.
Well, banks kind of have that same issue at times.
But that's backed. So I know that, like, up to a certain amount, like, it's
backed
secured.
by what?
The FDIC.
Yeah, the FDIC is backed by... it's all seemed a little bit of a shell game. That's what Sam's point is. It's backed by something. It's backed by something. It's backed by something. And ultimately, the thing it's backed by is not backed by anything.
Yeah.
I think I said that correctly.
You can keep having it backed up.
Okay, but answer me this. Okay, if my account has $250,000 in it.
Gee whiz, then we're paying you way too much money.
Yes, okay. Well, let's say more like $2,000 or whatever. If I want to go to the bank and say, okay, they can say, okay, not right now, but you still have that value, and they are responsible to pay you that amount.
That's right.
But like Bitcoin, it could go to zero, and that's it. Like, it didn't matter. That same $2,000.
They'll still give you the Bitcoins, though. It's the same thing.
But they're
with
worthless.
But what if our dollars become worthless? I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
No one likes devil's advocate.
One Bitcoin is always worth one Bitcoin.
That's
the
right.
value for it changes. That's like changing currencies. Hell, they'll still give you $100 if you ask for it.
But
it
to
may
John's
not be
point,
worth $100.
Bitcoin is not something that's that I can go buy groceries with. It's not something I can buy. Okay, so they accept Bitcoin at the grocery store?
In some towns, they do, actually. Some places.
Stop it.
Just not in Birmingham, Alabama.
Where do they offer Bitcoin?
Well, frankly, in San Salvador, which is in El Salvador, they use Bitcoin as one of their legitimate or official currencies. And there are places out in the left coast which have taken it as a form of payment and what have you. So, listen,
so wait, do you say it's the
norm.
new? Is it the new debit card to our generation?
That's not my generation. This might be where we talk about generational differences in terms of acceptance of Bitcoin.
Well, because I'm sure people are looking at a plastic card being like, oh my gosh, no, I'm not going to use that. That's not money.
I've told you this on this podcast previously about my mother. I'm still lucky to have both my parents alive. Mother is going to be of a certain age this year, and she's never had an ATM card. And I asked her that, she goes, I use checks. And because she doesn't want the card to be stolen or fraudulent and all that stuff. And I've said, come on, check's even worse than that. So, I hear what you're saying about that. Certain generations don't trust the ATM. Maybe my generation, which obviously comes after my parents, maybe we don't really kind of understand why people would use Bitcoin as a form of currency. Sam, I'm looking at you because here you are, Gen Z, really the
babies.
The generation which has really sort of jumped on the bandwagon with cryptocurrencies in general. The people in your generation, and I'm sure you have people that say they made a ton of money on this, opened up $100 in their Coinbase account and have $200 and then talk about the fortune that they made. Did any of them see this reversal of fortune, shall we say? Did any of them see it coming?
I don't think so, considering, to me, I think one of the best things that's happened with cryptocurrencies and decentralized currency talk is it's made people focus more on monetary and fiscal policy and what's happening with our dollar and what we're doing with that. So I think that part of it has been great. But I've long said that, in a period of low interest rates where risk on has been the motto for the last decade plus, you cannot really, it has not been battle tested. Cryptocurrencies have not been battle tested in an environment that has consistently rewarded people for taking more and more risk. This is the first time since they've been invented, that they've gone into a strong, really strong tightening cycle, and we're seeing what's happening. So to me, this discussion of whether it's a currency and a highly speculative investment, it goes back to just being a highly speculative investment. That isn't again really backed by anything, and in a period where rates are rising and credit's getting tighter, we're seeing what happens to all highly speculative investments.
Do you think that with it coming out of this, that it'll give people more confidence in investing in the future?
I think, Courtney, that's a great question. I think I might have even said it here previously, but I know I've said it to at least you, Sam, and probably you too, Courtney. I like the technology, the blockchain technology. It's hard to describe. I get it conceptually, but I couldn't necessarily explain to you exactly how it works. It's here to stay. And I'm going to draw a comparison to the late 1990s when the internet was just coming out. No doubt that this was going to change the way that we conduct business and how we live our lives. And so any company that had the word internet in its business model and a $500,000 line of credit from the bank, all of a sudden you were multimillionaires overnight because we all knew this was the next big wave. The internet stocks. You said the word internet and people threw money at you. It wasn't that the internet wasn't a good idea, we didn't know how to value it, if that makes sense. And then the dot-com bubble came and went, and there's still a few names that are out there. Amazon was able to slug through it, but a whole bunch of them a whole bunch of Pets.com's no longer around, Trues, and just a number of them, just names you've never even heard of, Courtney, are just fallen by the wayside. Although the services that they were purporting to provide back then were now doing, but they just couldn't figure out how to get it done with the internet back then. So I would say back then, it wasn't that the internet wasn't a good idea, we just didn't know how to value it. Fast forward to now, it's not that blockchain technology is not a good idea. It's not that even cryptocurrencies aren't a good idea. We just don't know how to value them. So after the dust settles with this shakeout and what have you, you're going to see some of these silly coins go by the wayside. I think there'll always be a Bitcoin, Ethereum, maybe a few others, and those are going to be the ones that stand the test of time, and they'll be around for a long period of time, but people might be a little bit older, a little bit wiser coming out of this tightening cycle and not view it as, hey, I'm going to go make $1 zillion off of Bitcoin this quarter. Sam, your thoughts?
I'm just not I joke about my libertarian leanings, but I'm not the biggest fan of cryptocurrencies. I just don't think there is a long-term viable solution for them outside of speculative investments. And maybe that does work out. And I do think the technology is going to work out at times. But right now, going back to, the U.S., the Federal Reserve talking about a U.S. digital coin and the Chinese talking about their own digital coin, talking about that process of things settling out, what does that look like? Because again, the government's going to want to know where your transactions are. We're already seeing those issues with Venmo and the government being able to know where your transactions are, and selling something that says the government's not going to know what these transactions are. How's that going to work? How does that ever...
And how will, to your point, China, the United States, or just in any government be okay with that in the long run? Ultimately, they're going to want to tap into that market.
Well, I would tell you, in terms of their central banks and treasury departments coming up with their own digital coins, that makes zero sense to me. I understand why Bitcoin will be around. I'm going to tell you why. For illegal transactions and for people that want to get their money out of a particular country or locality or something like that. And then other people are just, hey, we're going to play with it. So there's going to be some speculation, but there will be a use for it. Maybe not all of it legitimate in the eyes of, legitimate business. But in terms of the U.S. Treasury Department coming out with its digital coin, what's the purpose of that? Because the Treasury Department is going to track it, and that's one of the attractive aspects of cryptocurrencies is the Treasury Department can track it.
For now.
But the thing is, if the Treasury Department does do that, they've created a currency that they can track, which is, how's that unlike just dollars that are held in digitized format in the banking system?
I think that's really to me, and I may be mistaken, is getting dollars onto kind of the blockchain technology. And, maybe there is benefit to that, being able to wire things 24/7, 365, and being able to get things out of a country, even though it is tracked, per se, and just what that looks like.
But when you describe it that way, when you say, like, it's untrackable and that way the government can't be monitoring what you're doing, or you can get it out of countries you don't want it in, that's, to me, also kind of the reason in which I don't want to buy into it, because I'm like, well, I'm not a criminal, and that's for criminals.
What about dollars?
What do you mean?
Physical dollars. Unmarked 20s, hundreds.
What do you mean unmarked?
Criminals use dollars too.
Yeah. That's been the go-to.
Yeah,
it's
but
still
I'm saying
go-to.
that the whole point is that this was potentially created to like money launder or to hide money from the government.
Laundering
Courtney,
came from washing actual dollars.
Courtney, all
Yes.
you're trying to do, listen, we all know this.
But like the average person, like the good person that doesn't deal with criminals, like, why would they need to hide their money from the government?
Same with the whole.
Sam, we all know Courtney's trying to get the feds, get her sent off the feds, all that stuff.
Or a Marty Bird over here.
She's trying to make sure she's like that raccoon walking through the middle of the creek and all that stuff. Just trying to get them, throw them off set and all that stuff.
I'm aware of that reference.
Well, I mean, you know what I'm talking about.
I do not know.
Well,
I'd like to hear more about this.
Trading perspectives again.
it's okay. Courtney, aka the Shadow, is doing a lot of nefarious transactions on the blockchain with the Bitcoin and what have you. The feds are after her, so now she's trying to throw them off her scent by saying, "I'm never going to use Bitcoin."
And
all
thank
that
you,
stuff.
John. Now, if someone gets a little snippet of that, they're going to think that that's the story that we're sitting here talking about.
Well, I think it is the story.
You need to explain your whereabouts last weekend.
Yeah, great.
No, but in terms of kind of going back to why we started talking about this is after seeing the meteoric rise really of Bitcoin last year, where I don't think, Sam, there's a single client that didn't ask us at some point, what are you doing about Bitcoin? What are you going to do about Bitcoin? What are you going to do about Bitcoin? We have our people within the organization. When are you all going to start doing this? When are you going to start doing that? Interestingly enough, I'm not getting a lot of those same questions any longer.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Because our contention was last year, and you actually analyzed it and wrote up that we thought it was still a speculative asset class. There's still a ways to go to figure out how this is going to behave, and now we're finding out exactly what happens. What do you say moving forward? Is there ever a period of time where you think that this might have a legitimate spot in an asset allocation strategy?
I think the point where that happens is less about cryptocurrencies themselves and more about the psychology of investments and then the typical chart and feelings, general feelings going on within an asset class. And, there becomes a point where there is absolute disdain and people don't want anything a part of an asset class. And if it's something that is going to stay around, that's typically the time where it starts to have a little more say in it. Not the times where everybody's calling you saying, how do we get this? How do we get this? It's going up every day. Why don't we have any?
Well, let me ask you this. After having seen Bitcoin go from $67,734.04 on November 11th of 2021, it got down as low as $17,785.09. Is that the capitulation trade that we need to see in order to make cryptocurrencies more attractive to the average investor?
To me, no, because I think pain comes before the disdain towards it. The disdain is in a longer period of this, just tons of people lost money. It keeps trickling downwards, and it reaches a point. It's a time thing, too. It's not just a price thing, I think, where you get this complete disdain towards an asset class.
Well, it kind of reminds me of how my college girlfriend ended up feeling about me, just general disdain.
Man, ouch.
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously anything we talk about here is not necessarily an offer or a pitch to buy and sell investment securities or financial advice of any sort. However, I might be inclined to agree with you. I'm not exactly sure if this most recent trade, believe it or not, is the capitulation trade that you need to see in order to kind of get everyone out of cryptocurrencies just in general. I'm not sure the disdain is there yet. I think people are still going, okay, when's it going to go back up? I think what you're saying is when they finally eventually throw the baby out with the bathwater, and maybe they've got the tub right by the window right now, until that point, until people would just go, oh, hell with it. It's not that time to go in and play with it.
Yeah, when people are still trying to find the time to buy the dips, that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
And that's general investment psychology thing, not a crypto specific.
Now, Courtney, in terms of your friends and people that you talk this type of stuff with, if you do, and I imagine it's probably a topic of great conversation out at the ball field and all that type of stuff, Sunday school. I mean, do you know anyone your age or your friends that are actively playing the cryptocurrency market and wondering when it's going to go back out or up or all that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our friends might dabble in it where they have, they might have some investment in digital currency, but it's more of just like anything else that they would have in their investment account, that they kind of have put money into it just because they're like, I couldn't, make a good bit of money off this, but it's not money that they live off of. They're not actually using it as currency. It is an investment, alternative investment.
Has anyone told you the exact number of coins they have or the Satoshis?
No,
How about you, Sam?
No.
And that's a great thing about cryptocurrencies. It's a great thing about many people's home run investments. They can sit there and say, I've done really well in Bitcoin.
You doubled your money.
I've done well. At one point, I was 75% up, and I had a little crypto, a little Litecoin, little Cardano, all that stuff. I was up 70%, a total of $70. And so, but even so, I tell people I'm up 70%. And that's what you'll find out of. I would imagine a lot of people that say they dabble in cryptocurrencies are buying a couple of Satoshis, or when they open up their Coinbase account, they get $5 worth of it, and they add another 20 and what have you. So a lot of people have lost a lot of money here, on paper at least. However, I don't think that necessarily has trickled down to the average American investor quite yet.
I agree.
What do you think, Courtney?
I agree as well.
All right, so I'm not sure if we're trading perspectives other than my bad analogies and the bloodhounds and throwing the feds off.
I think Sam and I have learned.
Well, I mean, you're just throwing Courtney's throwing her son off anyhow. I just talking. My tongue is just tied in knots. Since Courtney made that comment about my hair, and anyhow, that's it.
Back to my fault.
always under the bus with you.
Yes.
So with that, we always love to hear from you. Also, if you have any comments or questions, please, by all means, let us know. You can always drop us a line at tradingperspectives@oakworth.com, or you can leave us a review on the podcast outlet of your choice. Of course, if you're interested in reading more or hearing more of what we have to say or how we think, please go to oakworth.com and take a look underneath the Thought Leadership tab for all kinds of exciting information. You guys have any last thoughts on this topic?
That's it.
That's it, John.
That's all I've got today, too. Y'all take care.